All right, guys, I am so excited for our latest edition of the Lowcountry Porchcast, which we're doing from this beautiful setting overlooking the May River in downtown Bluffton. And I'm joined with Alice Fraser, who is not only a great friend, but a neighbor of ours here in Old Town Bluffton. And just wanted to have a conversation with you to appeal to some of the people, and I think it's most people, that are drawn to the natural beauty of this area. And we're just so blessed with these incredible trees and marsh grasses and waterways, but also all the vegetation. And I guess what one would call the flora of the flora and fauna, right? This component of what just adds to the natural beauty of the Lowcountry. And that's an area of passion for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. And believe it or not, the camellias, which are called the winter rose because they bloom in the winter when pretty much everything else is dormant, is not a native plant. It was imported into the United States, and they all originated in Asia and Japan, and that's why the botanical name is Camellia japonica.
Oh.
They came into the United States first in the late 1790s.
Okay.
Up into New England, and they were considered a prized possession. People bought them like fancy sports car today. They might have a greenhouse for their prized possessions.
And that would be like a status symbol for someone to have that camellia plant in a greenhouse.
In a greenhouse.
But not all climates must be hospitable to the camellia.
No.
Which is, by the way, what we're really wanting to talk about today. And if you're a camellia fan, you're really going to love what Alice is sharing. But that's one of your favorite go-to plants.
Absolutely. And it loves this climate. The temperature is good. It's temperate climate. We have plenty of rain.
Yeah.
They like partial shade. We've got big live oak trees and pine trees that provide plenty of shade. They like acidic soil, and pine trees, pine needles make the soils acidic.
Okay.
So basically the Camellia belt is from the coast of Alabama all the way up through the coast of South Carolina, a little bit into North Carolina, but then you start getting hardier camellias that I'm not as familiar with those.
Sure. And you mentioned the winter bloom, because I was asking my wife, Carrie, she's a big fan of beautiful blooming shrubs as well. And I said, well, they're all in bloom now. She said, no, they're not all in bloom right now. And this is, here we are in March. She said they bloom at different times throughout the course of the year.
Well, not the whole year, at least the Camellia sasanqua, which is fall blooming. It starts in November. I usually think of that as starting in Thanksgiving. And then starting in December, we get some of the early blooming Camellia japonicas. We're right now in the late blooming season.
Okay.
So March and April are still blooming. It's not like they started late. This is when they bloom.
Okay.
So actually in this little book that I did, we have 3 seasons, early, middle, and late. Early is November to December.
Okay.
Middle is January and February, and late is March and April. And
so it's pretty much 5 or 6 months, November through April, and then the show is over and they're doing their thing. And by the way, so if somebody has a camellia on their property or multiple camellia, and they're trying to figure out when's the best, based on that, when's the best time to prune them or shape them or cut them back based on those blooms?
As soon as the blooms are over,
that's it.
You can prune after that.
Okay.
If you wait into, let's say, 2 or 3 months, you started new growth, and what you're cutting off may be next year's blossoms.
Okay.
Same thing with azaleas. You prune as soon as the bloom season is over, and
that's for the best health.
For the
plant.
best health.
Okay.
Unless it's something like major wrong or broken limb or something, you do that anytime.
Yeah. Because when the camellia, they set, and this is your terminology, now this is my terminology, not yours, but they set a pretty big bud, right? Like that you would never want to cut when that's on the shrub. You'd want to wait and get your bloom and then wait after that.
But there's some people who are camellia, people who exhibit camellias, who want to have the prettiest bloom. They will remove some buds
Okay.
So if you have, it's like people do this for fruit trees too. If you have 5 healthy buds on the end of a branch and you want to get a really pretty camellia, you remove 4 buds.
And all the energy and
Goes
focus
into
goes
the one.
on that one, which then may expand
Exactly.
larger and that sort of thing. All right, so let's go back a little bit. Not only is this an area of interest or passion for you and a lot of experience, which we'll get into, but you are a master gardener. Is that correct? You have that
Yes.
designation or that education. Where did that take place?
Through Clemson Extension.
Okay.
And I did the course 22 years ago.
Okay.
At that point, it was only offered over in Beaufort. Now it's offered at Hilton Head, Bluffton, and Beaufort because there's so many people who want to take it.
Yeah. And you would recommend that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the people in the class when I took it were people who moved here from elsewhere. And because it's different growing zone,
Right.
they wanted
Different
to
materials.
relearn different plant material and so
Mhm.
forth. So it was a good re-education for them.
Yeah.
For me, even though I had grown up around gardening, around people who love flowers, people who love landscaping,
Yeah.
I didn't really know the basics.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was a good way to get grounded.
For someone like myself, I enjoy taking care of our yard, and what I do, if I do it well, and I don't know if I do or not, tends to just be intuitive. I don't have that technical knowledge. I know it looks good, and I kind of have some common sense about it, et cetera. But that would be that's the University of Clemson, right? They can. That's an extension of that. And you also have this in common with my wife Carrie as a master naturalist, which is a different program, learning more about habitat, waterways, the marshlands, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So you know a lot.
Yeah.
So when as you know a lot, when did you learn about this layering technique? And tell us what that is, because I want to share with everybody about this project that you were integral to that has taken place at the Wright Family Park in Old Town Bluffton. And it was fascinating about the town, or I assume is it town funded and town driven?
What we've done?
The project, is it, or they gave you a plot of the park to say you can do your Camellia project?
We asked them if we could plant camellias there that we propagated.
Okay.
And that was 5 years ago. And they said, go ahead and try it. I don't think they had any idea what we were going to come up with.
Right.
They haven't paid for anything.
Okay.
And we've gotten grants. We got grants from the Lowcountry Master Gardener Association, a couple of private funds. The Bluffton Gardener Association initially gave some money just to buy materials to do the propagating.
Okay. So I want to talk about that because the town obviously had a landscape plan for that beautiful waterfront park, and I think they did a wonderful job with that. But they heeded your request to have a section. It's there towards the back or towards the north side of the park, right in front of the new Welcome Center. And you're talking about propagating. So this was fascinating because you didn't just get money to go buy new camellias. In fact, you did the opposite. You did this process that you happen to do across our property and several properties in the area, that you're sort of borrowing from an existing camellia.
We're cloning.
You're cloning. So what does that look like? I said that's called air layering.
Air layering. Okay, so the way you can propagate a camellia would be from seed. And if you collect the seeds and plant them, it's not going to look identical to the parent.
Okay.
Just like
Right.
anything
Just
else,
like
it's a
us.
seed. And if you grow it from seed, in a year you may have something that big.
Mhm.
And in 3 years, maybe that big.
Okay.
So it's a slow process.
Yeah.
But it can be done.
Sure, of course.
Then there's propagation by cuttings, and nurseries and people who are doing large quantities would do a small cutting where they're taking cutting the stem and sticking it in a growing medium, and they're starting off with maybe something 8 to 10 inches tall,
Okay.
and they're in a controlled environment, and they're doing mass quantities, and they get mass results,
Sure.
but they're starting with something small.
And when they do a cutting, They put it in a growing environment, not to be too technical, but that allows it to develop
New roots.
Okay,
New
got it.
roots.
So that's
Okay.
not what you did.
No,
We didn't do seed. We didn't do trimmings.
we
There's air layering.
we did air layering, and this is a form of propagation where you don't cut the stem off of the tree. You basically work on a limb and leave it in place on the tree.
Right.
And air layering, what you will remove is identical to the parent plant. So you are scraping off a portion of the stem.
Okay. Like the
Limb,
bark, if you will.
say you've chosen a limb 3 feet long,
Sure.
which means you're going to start with a much bigger plant. So about maybe 8 inches from where the stem connects to the trunk,
Okay.
you're going to scrape off all the way around, all of the bark,
Okay.
the outer bark and the inner bark.
Okay.
And you get down to the cambium layer.
Okay.
And when you get to that point, you cover that wounded area with a rooting hormone or a gel.
Which you can just buy.
You can buy that.
Mhm.
And then you wrap the wounded area with wet sphagnum moss,
Okay.
which you then seal. We experimented with different ways, but we use cling wrap, which it works once it's in place, but if you've ever worked with cling wrap in
It's
the kitchen,
awkward.
you know it's awkward.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's helpful if you have 2 people doing it at a time. You cover the sphagnum off with the cling wrap, and you seal it at both ends. We used electrician's tape
Okay.
initially,
Yep.
and then we started using zip ties,
Oh,
which
okay.
were simpler.
Sure. Yeah.
This is
Easier to apply.
electrician's tape. You would cut it off, you would hang it from a branch, and then you pull it off as you needed it. But
Right.
anyway, it worked. And then we cover that with aluminum foil
Right.
and tighten that just by hand. The problem with aluminum foil, if you leave it bare, is it's shiny and attracts birds.
Oh, they
So
want to peck at
The
it,
birds will peck a hole in it or can,
and that ruins the environment.
and that ruins the environment.
Mhm.
It either becomes too dry or too wet.
So when as you had done that, and I honestly didn't know exactly what you were doing. I just know that you every once in a while I'd say, well, there's Alice, and she'd be walking, checking on this, and you would text us, say, I'm going to come over and check on it. And that took a while. Like how long
Yes.
is that process?
So you do that in the spring and it's done on evergreens.
Okay.
So it's a hardwood and it's an evergreen. You do it when the sap starts to move. So these plants are still dormant. They bloom when they're dormant, which is unusual.
Okay.
Once dormancy is finished and the sap starts moving, that's when you can start the air layering.
Okay.
So we're going to start it in April.
Okay.
That's ideal month here is April.
Is this something you do every year?
We are now doing it every year because we like it.
Oh,
and
right.
because there's still some that we don't have that we need. Like you have one out here we still need.
We're still okay. So
Yeah.
we're going to see you
We're
again
gonna
in
see,
April.
yeah.
How long does it take from beginning? It's like from the time that you start
6
that
months.
process, 6
6
months.
months.
So then let's say then that's October-ish or something, then you come and you remove. What are you removing? Like what
Well,
have you created?
So you have this stem off of the main trunk. You've left a gap before you do the place where you've wounded. So then you cut the limb off from the
Underneath
trunk
that.
all the way back to the trunk. So it's a nice clean cut. You
Right.
don't leave a stub.
Sure.
And then you have this limb and it has a little piece sticking down. That's fine.
Right.
Then you remove all the wrapping.
Right.
And it takes a while.
Sure.
Because you've
Of course.
done a good job of sealing it.
Yes.
And you stick it in a bucket of water to rehydrate,
Okay.
assuming it has roots.
Right.
When you open it up and you see this fabulous root ball,
That's what you see.
Yeah,
So it's sort of
root
like
ball.
a cocoon that has
Right.
given birth to this root ball.
and if you open it up and there aren't roots, usually what's happened is you didn't do a good job of getting the bark removed the whole way around. It might have just had a little thread that was still connected, and therefore it didn't detach from the parent plant,
Right.
and so it never developed on its own.
Got it. Yeah.
So it
Fascinating.
basically scarred over and didn't create
So
a new plant.
How many new plants did you successfully create
Okay.
for this project?
The first year, we had 20 property owners like yourself who allowed us to come into their gardens. We identified 120 plants, and we divided into 3 groups 3 master gardeners per group. So each group had 40 plants
Right.
that we worked on.
Right. So you had 40 plants.
We had
that
40,
were your
40
babies.
trees, but we might do more than one on a tree.
Oh, okay, sure. I think I
Yeah.
saw. Yeah, got it.
Say you had 5 in your garden that we worked on. We may have done 10 air layers in your garden.
Because that doubles the success
That's
rate.
right. Yeah.
Got it. Because some won't be.
Some will not
Some
work.
won't be. Just no matter what. No matter how good you are, it
Right.
just might not take.
And especially the first year, we taught ourselves by a YouTube video. We
Yeah.
did not have
I was
anybody come
wondering.
teach us what to do.
Maybe you should have done your own YouTube video, and we'll do one for you.
We had an 80% success rate that first year.
Wow, that's got to be high.
We were stunned.
Yeah.
We were
Your plan was maybe 50.
maybe,
Or
yeah,
less.
maybe.
All right, so you have 80% success rate. You take these plants, then you put them in the next environment. Ultimately, some number of them
Mhm.
are now in the ground. So tell us about that, and for people that want to go take a look at that, what are they going to see? Because they're good size now.
Well, they started off instead of as a something this big that you had to wait 6 years to get
Like
large
a clipping or something.
because you start with a longer stem. You basically have a plant that's ready in size, is ready to go in the ground. But we kept them all at least a year before we planted them because we wanted to make sure they developed
in
roots
the greenhouse
in the pot.
environment.
No, we just did it in our gardens
Oh,
because we didn't want to protect them in a greenhouse because they got to live outside here.
right. They got to learn how
We
to.
divided them among 3 houses, and we just tended them like our own outside nursery.
And you had to label these because
Oh,
you
yeah.
needed to know which one was which one, because you got this objective of making sure that, I don't want to say they're all represented, but you've got a
Yeah.
target variety of list that you
Right.
want to have represented.
Yes, and also, for example, when we went around when the trees were in bloom and we marked the ones that we wanted to propagate, we marked them while they were in bloom. But when we came back in April, the blooms were gone. So we had to label on some form that this was a pink blossom and what it looked like. Because the first year we didn't know the names. We were teaching ourselves not only how to do the propagating, but also how to identify these old varieties.
And again, these are old varieties. You're talking about dating back, some of them potentially before 1800, coming into the America.
What we focused on was what we call ancient varieties. And the ancient varieties were all named and in existence by 1900.
Okay.
So there is a list of over 200 names in the American Camellia Society website, and that was our starting point. So we wanted to use just the old ones.
Yeah.
We did do some that were up to 1950,
Okay.
and those are called antiques. So you got ancient, antique, and then you've got 2 other categories: modern. Wait, something else.
Okay.
Modern.
And
But
by the
we
way,
use old ones.
you're flipping through this book. Tell us this book that you wrote. It's about the project. Is that right?
Yes.
And so that's a history of the project, information about sort of the donors or where the new plant or the new old plants came from.
Yes. So we started during COVID. And the reason we did this during COVID is because during COVID there was not a whole lot
Yeah.
that people could do. And so I had a cousin who actually, his parents used to live in this house, and she approached me and asked me if I was interested in doing something about Camellias for Wright Park, because her friend had lived in the Wright house
Okay.
before they sold it to the town.
Okay. Right.
So that was the starting point.
Right.
She didn't have any interest in doing the project, but it was her idea. So I said, and I'm a master gardener.
Yeah. So you can do
Looking for
this.
something to do. This was fun. It was a great project. So we had 9 people who were interested in doing it. We had 20 property owners who were interested. Now we have tried to protect the property owners from peeping toms.
Sure. Okay.
Although we listed the names here,
Yes.
we don't use addresses,
Got it.
and we didn't say that
This plant
this
came
plant came from that location because we don't want somebody coming over here
to see the original.
to see
To
these.
see the parent. Got
Yeah.
it. But you do have little plaques or placards in front of each of those. So as
Yes.
someone goes to the Wright Family Park, they'll be able to see what's going to be on the placard and how will they relate to that.
Okay, so this one that you have,
Oh, that gigantea.
Gigantea,
Yeah,
it,
it's somewhere in here.
it
There's a
originated
page flipped.
in Europe, and it came to the United States in 1840.
Okay.
So that's on the plaque. So the name of the plant, it says Europe to USA. It says 1840, and then on this sheet, and in the book, we tell you the form. There's six flower forms,
Okay.
and then the season. So this was a semi-double that can be an anemone or a peony, and M means middle season.
So we'll display what this is.
Yeah.
But people will see that, and then but the placards, those plaques are also in front of each one of
Yes,
those.
there are stake labels that are about 30 inches tall.
Okay.
Maybe a 4 by 6 inch top. Nice, good, sturdy ones. The Master Gardener Association paid for those stakes
Oh, nice.
when they saw how much interest there was in the project.
Are they in bloom successfully now? These
I
new
walked over
plants?
there today, and there were 6 currently in bloom of the 20 we put in.
Okay. Oh, is that the first time they bloomed?
Each of them have bloomed at least once.
Okay.
So we know that they're
Well, they are, right? Because there's a magic moment where
Yeah.
they bloom and you're saying, okay, does that match with the parent?
yes. Yeah.
And they did.
Yes, they do.
Wow.
And in addition to the ancient ones, we wanted to pay tribute to a lady who lived in Bluffton named Sally Fripp, who lived on Calhoun Street, the corner of Calhoun and Wharf. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, the
Oh,
house.
Lawrence?
Yeah.
Lawrence,
That
yeah.
house, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Sally Lawrence lived there in, say, 1900 to 1940 something.
Okay.
She was a teacher, but her hobby was playing with camellias.
Yeah.
And she propagated and she played around with them and cross-pollinated and created this one.
Wow.
And
Which is stunning.
it is stunning. It's a single. Can you see that? It's a single form, red and white, and she developed it before the American Camellia Society was even an organization.
Okay.
So she never registered it. So it is not listed anywhere.
Right.
We have named it, and we want to pay tribute to her.
Oh, that's great.
And we hope that we can get it registered someday.
Tell me about this book can be purchased for someone that's interested
Yes,
at the Hayward House
at the Hayward
in
House,
Old Town
in the
Bluffton,
gift shop.
in the gift shop to learn more specifically about the project,
right?
which is just a block or so away at the Wright Family Park.
Yes.
So if someone is really interested, they can go to the Hayward House, pick up the book, walk not even a quarter mile down to the Wright Family
Yes.
Park, and really engage with the real plants that are in place.
Exactly. And this sheet, which the town prepared, we are going to hand out at this talk we're doing tomorrow.
Okay.
They prepared it, and it showed all of everyone that on here is one that's in the park and has a label.
Okay.
So
So that's a true representation
yes.
of what people can see now and or into the in
yes,
the future. It's going to feel pretty neat to have done this project, and those plants, God willing, nature willing, will last a long, long
that's
time.
my lifetime.
Yeah, you've left your mark in the community in what a special way. I'm so grateful for it. And we were so honored to be included in it. Not that we planted the plants, but we happen to have benefited from their being here, and it's fun to have participated in that way too.
Well, the one that you have that didn't work for us yet is the oldest one.
Okay.
It's called Plana alba,
Right.
which means alba's white. It's 1792, and it came from England. And you have that out
Out
in
on
your
the property.
driveway. Yeah, I don't know whether we didn't propagate it, we thought we were doing it somewhere else, or whether we didn't do it correctly. But we want to try again
So I might see you
Yes.
skulking
Soon.
around the yard
soon.
soon.
Yes.
we'll look forward to it. Thank you for what you've done and
You're
for
welcome.
all that you do, and you've
It's not
contributed
just
this
me.
way.
There
Oh,
are other people who've done it.
I
with
know
me.
it's not just about you. You're humble, but you're driven and motivated, and you've made a really nice impact in the community in a really special way, especially for folks that admire this natural beauty of our environment. You've enhanced it, and for that I'm really grateful. Thanks for being with us tonight.
See you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.